The first question I received, and I think it's a really good question, why was Gaza blockaded? Why there was a blockade on Gaza? And also, I think in this question we can discuss the myth of the open air prison, because I've been seeing and reading and hearing this term a lot. There is an open air prison called Gaza, and the people there are starving and suffering, and and they are in deep hardship because of this blockade. Let me start here by saying that since 2005, there has been no presence whatsoever of any Israeli troops inside Gaza. So for the past 18 years, Gaza has been more or less free of any Israeli control or interference inside Gaza. In 2005, then Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon, the controversial bulldozer as he was known at that time because of his pro-settlements policy in the West Bank, did the unthinkable and unexpected by starting this policy called the disengagement from Gaza, where he unilaterally dismantled 21 settlements inside Gaza that existed there for years since 1967 occupation, and started to move the settlers back into Israel proper. Some went to the West Bank, but nonetheless, the disengagement from Gaza was complete almost by August of 2005. And the Palestinian Authority, which was already in control of most of Gaza at that time, were given the full control of the territory. Now, it is important to understand that at that time, Hamas was a group within the society. It was a militant group, a terrorist group already proscribed by the European Union, by the UK, by Australia, by Canada, by the US. They all designated Hamas as a terrorist organization by then. Still, they were considered to be embedded within the Palestinian society. The PLO, which comprised the Palestinian Authority, did not want to have a direct clash with Hamas, and therefore they just wanted to keep a lid on them now that they are on their way towards a Palestinian statehood and the negotiations. Of course, all of this happened, post Second Intifada, which was catastrophic for the Palestinian cause, to say the least. Now, and from 2005 until 2007, Gaza wasn't blockaded. Tens of thousands of Palestinians from Gaza used to go to Israel every day for work, and they had work permits, as well as the fact that the Rafah crossing with Egypt was open, and Gaza was open for business, open for trade. And yet, of course, the economy in Gaza was still reeling from the effects of the Second Intifada. However, in the summer of 2007, an event happened that changed all of this equilibrium. Hamas mounted a military and security coup against the Palestinian Authority's security apparatus, and they just expelled them out of Gaza, not to mention killed dozens of them, dragged their bodies in the street. Some of them escaped into Israel in their underwear. The Palestinian Authority was in shambles and they escaped. Of course, there was a lot to be said about the Palestinian Authority's corruption and harsh crackdown on some of Hamas members. But nonetheless, the issue here is the fact that Hamas took over Gaza, and suddenly the international community is having a problem. They have to deal with the fact that Gaza is a territory. At that time, it was 1.5 million people living there. Now it's about 2.3. It's a territory controlled by a terrorist organization. No matter how you try to spin it, but the fact of the matter is that an organization that carried out 80 suicide bombings, not to mention many other atrocities against Israeli civilians, it's rather difficult to describe them as anything but a terrorist organization. And this is why it was very difficult from the point of view of the international community to deal with a terror organization. And that is why Israel decided that we can't trust this organization. It has in its charter the destruction of Israel, the fact that they believe that all of Israel belonged to them and belonged to the Palestinian people, and it is the Palestinian state, and that the Jews there must be expelled by force if necessary. And therefore, how could the Israelis deal with that? So immediately there was a blockade. And the irony is that you can't have an effective blockade against Gaza unless if you blockade it also from Egypt. Many people don't understand that Gaza is bordered by both Israel and Egypt. And so since Hamas is a member of the International Organization of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Egyptian government at the time of Hosni Mubarak, the former president, never had any good relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood to begin with, they also blockaded the Gaza Strip. So it wasn't that easy just to announce a blockade like this, because there are a lot of issues related to having a direct talk with an organization that carried out 80 suicide bombings and caused the deaths of hundreds and hundreds of Israeli civilians at that time. Not to mention that it's not an isolated terror organization. It had links with Hezbollah, another terrorist organization. It had links with Iran, IRGC, which is an organization that was creating and feeding more militants, and they were at that time in 2007 engaging in killing American soldiers inside Iraq using IEDs. But the worst of all these relationships is Al-Qaeda. The fact that, as I mentioned in my autobiography, 9 Lives, I said that in 1999, members of Hamas were training in Al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan in order to learn to perfect a new way of creating TATP, which is a lethal explosive that is undetectable by electronic means, and I don't want to go into details as to why. So that is why the international community at the time did not want to have anything to do with Hamas directly, and they left that to the NGOs and the UN and other organizations. And that is what led to many people thinking, yes, there was a blockade of Hamas. And yes, it was actually accurate, a blockade of Hamas rather than a blockade of Gaza itself. And the years proved why it was important, because of the smuggling of weapons, explosives, chemicals, and missiles, and the fact that the Qassam brigades of Hamas turned Gaza into a big workshop for the creation of missiles in order to use against Israel in a future conflict. So they were preparing for this anyway. And we are not talking about the rights and wrongs here. We're not talking about whether Hamas is justified to do it or not, whether Israel was justified to blockade Hamas or not. We are just talking about, why Gaza was blockaded in the first place, and what is the rationale of both Egypt and Israel for that. Thank you.